Nippon Broadcasting Disaster Prevention Podcast, preparing for the Nankai Trough Earthquake Part 1. This is Midori Hakozaki from Nippon Broadcasting System. This podcast was created in response to the emergency information about the Nankai Trough earthquake released in August 2024, with the aim of providing listeners with accurate knowledge about the Nankai Trough earthquake. We hope you will add this program to your favorites and listen to it when the time comes. Today, we will learn about what the Nankai Trough earthquake is. Our speaker is Yoshiaki Fukuyama from the Cabinet Office's Disaster Management Policy Division. Thank you, Fukuyama-san.
My name is Fukuyama, and I am in charge of disaster prevention in the Cabinet. Thank you for having me today.
First, please tell me what kind of earthquake the Nankai Trough earthquake refers to.
Yes, first there is the Japanese archipelago. To the south, there is the Philippine Sea Plate. Roughly speaking, it is thought that large earthquakes occur when that plate subducts from the south to the north and the boundary shifts.
What kind of area does the Nankai Trough correspond to?
The range is from Suruga Bay in Shizuoka Prefecture in the east, gradually moving south, with the southernmost point being Hyuga-Nada in Miyazaki Prefecture, roughly around this area.
Is there a boundary where the Philippine Sea Plate is subducting?
Yes, it is at the boundary, and there, as it continues to sink and becomes unbearable, a large earthquake occurs. It is a mechanism like that.
A large earthquake, but what is the expected magnitude?
You can consider this to be similar to the Great East Japan earthquake. We are assuming a magnitude of 9.0.
Although the Nankai Trough earthquake has not occurred, there are warnings about the danger. Is the probability of its occurrence high?
There is a government earthquake research committee, and according to their assessment, the probability of a magnitude 8 to 9 earthquake occurring within the next 30 years is estimated to be 70 to 80%.
It's quite high, isn't it?
That's right, yes.
The probability of occurrence is quite high, but is it only the Nankai Trough earthquake that is being referred to in this way?
In addition to the Nankai Trough earthquake, earthquakes occurring in marine areas are also evaluated in terms of percentage. For example, the probability of a magnitude 7 class earthquake occurring within 30 years in Tokyo inland earthquake, as well as the southern Kanto region, is estimated to be around 70%.
This Nankai Trough earthquake is different from the Tokyo inland earthquake.
Well, the epicenter is often represented by a crossmark in the news. However, when a large earthquake occurs, it doesn't just affect a single point but has a broader impact, which is why we refer to it as an epicenter area. As I mentioned earlier, in the case of the Nankai Trough earthquake, the maximum class is expected to extend from Shizuoka to Hyuga-Nada in Miyazaki. In the case of a direct earthquake under the capital, it would occur right beneath the metropolitan area, with a magnitude of around 7. The seismic source areas are fundamentally different in these cases.
There was a mention of this being one of the largest classes in the seismic source area. But does that mean it will occur somewhere within the range from Suruga Bay to Hyuga-Nada? Or does it mean that the entire area will become a seismic source?
The government anticipates that the entire area will be destroyed in its damage estimates.
When a large earthquake occurs, I imagine it happens because the subduction becomes deeper and unbearable, resulting in a big bang of an earthquake. However, is it possible that if many small earthquakes occur, the shocks are somewhat alleviated individually, preventing a large earthquake from happening?
I think that could be possible, but unfortunately, based on current scientific knowledge, it is quite difficult to assess how much slip needs to be resolved before we can say that a major earthquake will not occur again.
In that case, we need to be prepared for what is going to happen.
You are right.
I think the source area for the Nankai Trough earthquake will be quite extensive. But what level of damage does the Cabinet Office anticipate at most?
In the case of the maximum class earthquake I mentioned earlier, where all assumed seismic source areas are destroyed, there are 127 municipalities that anticipate a seismic intensity of 7. In comparison to the Great East Japan earthquake, only one municipality observed a seismic intensity of 7 during that event.
Oh, is that so?
Yes, I think you can understand how strong shaking is expected over a wide area.
Are all 127 municipalities located on the Pacific side?
Yes, it is expected over a very wide area from the Tokai region to the Kinki region and Shikoku region.
First, I would like to ask about the seismic intensity.
Yes, very large tsunamis over 10 meters are anticipated in 79 cities and towns.
Yes,
In conjunction with this, we are also assuming the worst case scenario for human casualties and building damage. The worst case estimate for fatalities is projected to be 323,000 people.
did the 323,000 people include those affected by the tsunami or building collapses?
Including that. It is assumed that most of them are casualties due to the tsunami. Similarly, regarding building damage, it is estimated that in the worst case scenario, there will be 2.386 million buildings affected. Most of this damage is expected to be caused by shaking.
Does this not withstand the current seismic standards?
Well, even with the current seismic standards, the current seismic standards were established in 1981, so nearly 40 years have passed since then. And of course, aging must be considered. At the very least, it is important to adhere to the new seismic standards. For wooden houses, there is also a separate standard from 2000, so for those who have not yet addressed this, I hope you will consider it.
If it's based on the 2000 standards, will it be okay even if a large magnitude 7 earthquake hits?
There is no damage that would cause it to collapse completely. Of course, there may be some minor damage, but the design standards ensure that it will not reach a point where it significantly impacts human life or completely falls apart.
Does the damage vary depending on the season or time of day?
Of course it will change. The figure of 323,000 deaths I mentioned earlier is based on the assumption of an earthquake occurring in the deep of winter at midnight. In such a scenario, when an earthquake strikes during a winter midnight, power outages occur and evacuating from a tsunami becomes extremely difficult due to the complete darkness, making it hard to see your feet. This is why I have set the scenario for a winter midnight. Similarly, the damage to buildings estimated at 2.386 million structures is based on an earthquake occurring in the winter evening. This is a time when people are cooking dinner at home using fire. So not only is there the shaking from the earthquake, but the risk of fire damage also increases significantly during this season or time period, leading to these maximum figures.
In winter, it also gets dry.
That's right. It's also possible that the dryness makes it easier for the fire to spread.
What is the basis for the numbers that assume such damage?
Yes, first of all, the Great East Japan earthquake that I mentioned earlier was the first earthquake in Japan's recorded history to observe a magnitude of 9. There is a possibility that a large-scale earthquake of magnitude 9 could occur along the Nankai Trough, so we are estimating how strong the shaking will be, what the seismic intensity will be, and how high the tsunami will be when such an earthquake occurs. Based on that, we overlay data such as population distribution and building distribution to estimate casualties and building damage.
The Nankai Trough earthquake has occurred in the past as well.
The maximum class of earthquake used in damage estimation is something that has not yet been experienced in some areas. However, looking back at historical documents, it is understood that there have been multiple instances of magnitude 8 class earthquakes occurring with quite varied intervals averaging every 100 to 150 years.
When was the last time?
The last occurrence was the Showa Tonankai earthquake in 1944, and 2 years later, in 1946, there was the Showa Nankai earthquake, which makes this pair the most recent examples.
What was the seismic intensity of this?
This is somewhat different from the current seismic intensity. Nowadays, we measure it with a mechanical seismometer. Back then, it was based on the degree of building collapse and the strength of the shaking felt by people, which are recorded in ancient documents. Considering those factors, we estimate that it would be around this level of vibration today. Therefore, we believe it was at least a magnitude of 6 or higher.
The earthquakes of 1944 and 1946.
Yes.
Is this kind of thing common as well, even though it has been continuous?
Yes, I believe that the occurrence of large-scale earthquakes along the Nankai Trough after a certain period of time is one of their characteristics. One example is from the Ansei era in Edo, which was in 1854 before the Showa era. During this time, the Ansei Tokai earthquake, a magnitude 8 class earthquake, occurred first, and just 32 hours later, the Ansei Nankai earthquake took place.
Isn't this an aftershock?
Yes.
A strong earthquake in the same class?
Yes, the Ansei Tokai earthquake primarily affected the Tokai region, specifically from Shizuoka to Mie, which is the epicenter area. However, the Ansei Nankai earthquake that occurred 32 hours later was further west, affecting areas such as off the coast of Shikoku and Wakayama. Therefore, I believe it is different from aftershocks.
It is uncertain where significant related earthquakes may occur along the Nankai Trough, but they could happen consecutively.
Yes, it has been historically confirmed that events occur in one place and then, after a certain time delay, happen in another location. So it is conceivable that large-scale earthquakes may also occur with such time intervals in the future.
In the past, there has been quite a bit of this continuity.
Yes, I believe that historically there have been multiple instances of large earthquakes occurring after a period of time.
Moreover, this Edo period is 32 hours later, while the Showa period is 2 years later.
That's right, about 2 years later.
It's hard to relax, isn't it?
That's right. It's not necessarily the case that earthquakes occur after a certain amount of time. There have been instances along the Nankai Trough in the past where very large earthquakes happened all at once. Unfortunately, current seismology and science cannot predict which will occur next, so I believe that being prepared on a daily basis is extremely important.
On average, that cycle is about 100 to 150 years, and since the last occurrences were in 1944 and 1946, it might be coming soon.
That's right. There was about a 90-year gap between the Ansei earthquake in Edo and the Showa earthquake. Since it has been nearly 80 years since the last Showa earthquake, I think we are now at a time when it wouldn't be surprising if it happened at any moment.
Based on this, is it correct to understand that the Cabinet Office has issued temporary information on the Nankai Trough earthquake, indicating that the likelihood of occurrence is high, but it is calling for caution as it may be higher than usual?
That's right. As you mentioned, predicting earthquakes, or so-called earthquake forecasting, is currently considered difficult based on scientific knowledge. Earthquake prediction involves three elements: the time when the earthquake will occur, the location where it will happen, and the magnitude of the earthquake. Accurately predicting these factors constitutes earthquake prediction. However, unfortunately, it is currently not possible to make highly accurate earthquake forecasts. That said, if any abnormal phenomena are observed along the Nankai Trough, it is possible to evaluate that the likelihood of an earthquake occurring is relatively higher than usual, and to inform the public about this, we operate a system called the Nankai Trough Earthquake Emergency Information.
And that was first released in August 2024. We will discuss the details of this Nankai Trough earthquake emergency information next time. The person we have heard from so far is Mr. Fukuyama, the Director General for Disaster Management at the Cabinet Office. Thank you, Mr. Fukuyama.
Thank you.
This has been Midori Hakozaki from Nippon Broadcasting System.